All right, it looks like we have a pretty steady crowd, so I'll go ahead and get started. Welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Drew Scammell, and I am a program associate with the Inclusive STEM Ecosystems for Equity and Diversity, or IC program at the American Association for the Advancement of Science. On behalf of the Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program, I would like to welcome you to today's NSF Noyce Proposal Writing webinar for Track 4 Research and Capacity Building, featuring our NSF Program Directors, Dr. Kathleen Bergin and Kimberly Tanner. Before I hand it over to our wonderful NSF colleagues, I have a few quick housekeeping notes. This presentation is being recorded, and the recording will be made available in the coming weeks on the NSF Noyce website at nsfnoyce.org. You can find all our other recordings for the prior sessions there as well. You'll also receive an email with a link to the recording when it's available. And additionally, we have closed captioning for the session, and you can download and view the full transcript by clicking the CC button at the bottom of your screen. So without further ado, Drs. Bergin and Tanner, I'll hand it over to you. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, and thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us. And thank you for your interest in the research track in the Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program. I am the program lead for the Robert Noyce Teacher Scholarship Program, and I have been at NSF for over 19 years. And my colleague that is joining me, I will let her introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Tanner. I am a program director with the Noyce program here at the National Science Foundation. I'm a rotating program director. I think I have been here over 19 months. So my tenure at NSF much shorter than my dear colleague.
So to make this a really productive webinar, the best thing that you can do is to ask questions. And you're welcome to put them in the chat, but we're not going to answer them in the chat. We're going to have some times where we stop for Q&A, and that's when we will look at any questions you put in the chat and also ask you to unmute and ask questions. And the reason I say that's the best part of the meeting is that by asking your questions, it can generate understandings for others that didn't ask a question. Don't be afraid that somebody might steal your bright idea. In fact, you might find a collaborator in the groups because you raise something and somebody says, "Ooh, I'd like to work with that person because they're interested in whatever." And you're not competing against each other if you put in proposals. That's a really important thing to know. You're only competing against yourself in terms of the proposal that you put forth. And so we are really glad that you're here, and we're going to move on to the next slide. So you can see here what we have planned for you today. We'll give the meat of the track 4 aspect, and then talk about, writing a good proposal, and then give you some other resources. But you'll notice in there that we have at least 3 opportunities to respond to your questions. So again, if you have a question, either write it down or stick it in the chat. Don't lose it. We want to answer it, but we'll do it in these little chunks. Okay. This is important. The last Tuesday in August, so happens to be August 29th this year, but the solicitation is we hoped for several years. So Noyce does the last Tuesday in August, and that's true for all of our tracks. Next slide, please. This is who we are, the Noyce team. Obviously, you can see me up in the upper left-hand corner, and Kimberly is in the bottom row, second to the last. Next slide, please. So these are all the tracks. We're going to focus on track 4, but if you have interest in the other tracks, as Drew mentioned at the beginning, the webinars we've done earlier this week and last week have been posted on the nsfnoyce.org website, and you're welcome to look at those. But we want to focus on track 4. So the first thing I want you to notice, and you're going to hear me say these words multiple times, the research must focus on both STEM teacher effectiveness and STEM teacher retention in high needs school districts. It can't focus on just one. Now, the balance in your proposal doesn't have to be equal, but they both have to be really present there. So that's an important aspect of this. And by the way, we do allow capacity building proposals for track 4. In this solicitation, the amount of funding for a capacity building proposal in any track has been increased to $100,000. And but the amount of money that you're eligible for the Noyce track, for the research track, is $1 million plus. And I'll go about the plus in a little bit. Okay, next slide. So you have to build a team. Now, you can build as big a team as you want, but there are at least 2 individuals that we tell you need to be on the team. And one of those is someone in STEM education research. And the other is an individual who has an advanced degree in a STEM discipline or in STEM education. So now you can have 5 people that are PIs. That's 1 PI and 4 co-PIs. And by the way, NSF considers all those people equal, but you can have a bigger team than that if you need it. Notice that the requirement that I mentioned up there can't be met by just one person, even though you might be willing to tell us that they have this expertise. We need more than one. So the proposals come into us from universities or consortium of universities, but and that's true for all of our Noyce tracks, but for track 4, professional societies that actually work in the research in STEM education space can also apply. So it's not limited to universities. There's no restriction on the number of proposals from any organization. So if you're at the University of Almost Fabulous and you know they're putting in a track 1 and you want to put in a track 4, no problem. Next slide, please. So what are we looking for when we say Noyce research? And again, it has to focus on STEM teacher effectiveness and STEM teacher retention in high need school districts. Well, you can do exploratory studies that look at these things. You can come up with things that you want to do that are going to generate knowledge around these 2 aspects. You can use qualitative approaches, you can use quantitative approaches, you can use mixed method. So which one do we prefer? We prefer the one that will allow you to answer the research questions that you're going to put forth. So we don't care. We do care that the research methodology is going to allow you to answer the research questions that you put forth. And you remember a minute ago, I said $1 million plus. So you don't have to do this research on any Noyce teachers. It can be totally, you're looking at a different situation and you can get up to $1 million for that. But if you engage Noyce projects substantively, underscore substantively bold, in the research, then you can get an additional $100,000 for each Noyce project that you engage substantively. Now, if you do the math and you notice here it says up to 2.5 million, then if I had 100,000 and I want 1.5 million more, that's 15 more Noyce projects. Well, what if you wanted to do a study on 20 Noyce projects? Great, but you're not going to get any more than 100,000 for the first 15. By the way, the money doesn't have to be equally distributed. Each of those doesn't get 100,000. where does the money get distributed? Well, depends on the nature of the research you're doing. Who needs what money to do the research? So again, $1 million don't have to involve noise at all. $1 million involve noise, great. $1 million involve noise project substantively. And substantively means something much more than they're gonna allow you access to their scholars and fellows, or they're going to provide you with data. Neither of those things I just said constitute substantively. Next slide, please. So some possible studies, and again, you see here bolded and underlined and related to effectiveness and retention. And why do I keep saying that? Because that's one of the shortcomings we see in proposals is people focus on one and not the other. So you could look at teacher characteristics or program features that contribute to or are predictive of, or that when in the analysis you're doing, you're finding these kinds of characteristics are more likely to result in effectiveness or retention. But you've got to focus on both, not with every variable that you're looking at. Of course, retention of noise scholars and fellows who stay beyond their service requirements. So, you know, if they got funded in a track 1, 2, or 3, there's a requirement, a time requirement. And it varies for the scholars depending on how much support they got. Do they stay beyond that? If they had to serve because of the scholarship for 4 years, did they stay years 5, 6, 7? Or did they leave? High need school districts. And then you might look at the characteristics of high need school districts in which there is a higher rate of retention, or conversely, you're looking and finding out these characteristics are indicative of school districts where the teachers don't stay. And likewise, looking at effectiveness. And these are just examples. This is not telling you, here's what we want. These are just examples that if you didn't already have the wheel spinning, that you will consider, but we really want your best and brightest ideas. Next slide, please. So what must there be in these research studies? So obviously collaboration between the educational researchers and the faculty that work in the STEM disciplines, because that's all part of the work that we do. You've got to have a theory on which your research is designed, and don't ask the reviewers to guess what your theory is. Put it out there and name it. The theory undergirding this research project is blah, 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 blah. Here is the literature that supports that. It's advantageous to make reviewers very comfortable and say, I see what they're doing here. Okay. Of course, appropriate methodologies and strategies. And again, these are appropriate to what? Appropriate to answer the research questions that you are investigating. Obviously, we want to generate knowledge, but you may also be contributing to the theory that you started out with, or that you utilized and saw some divergence from. And you want to make the chain of reasoning explicit. Again, I'm going to say to you, don't make the reviewers try to guess how you're getting from, here's my research question, here's my methodology, here's my data, voila, we have answers. Don't give them a black box. You tell them, here's the chain of reasoning. And a lot of people use a logic model, and that's great, except that some logic models, they're so minimal that you still don't know. So try to make it obvious how you're going to get from your research questions to your results. And then you need external feedback on the work that you're doing, and both formative and summative. Now, these are research projects. So if you feel that an advisory board with the kind of expertise that is consistent with the kind of research and the methodology you're using would be the best mechanism for your project to give feedback, we're good with that. You should, however, tell us about what the advisory board is going to be doing. What are you going to provide to them? What kind of prompts are you going to give them to respond to? But an advisory board is fine. If you feel like an external evaluator, and really what I mean is an independent evaluator, they can be at your institution. They shouldn't be in the departments that are involved. But if you feel like an independent evaluator, a person that does project evaluation would make a real contribution in your formative and summative assessment of the work you're doing, that's fine too. And if you want to have both an advisory board and an independent evaluator, we're good with that. Just tell us what they're going to do, what they're going to look at, and what you expect to get from them. Next slide, please. So, surprise, surprise. The weaknesses, the very first one is the one that I've already repeated multiple times. And let me tell you, just using these words, effectiveness and retention throughout your proposal, it doesn't make the reviewers happy when they can't find, I don't know what they mean by effectiveness. I don't know how they're going to measure effectiveness. They keep saying they're going to. So that's the first shortcoming that we see repeatedly. And failing to actually state the research questions. Sometimes people will give us hypotheses, but we don't know what it is exactly they're going to investigate. Make it clear, and make it clear what data you're collecting and what the sources are. And if they are instruments that should have validity and reliability associated with them, tell us that. The solicitation actually says something about investigations that just look at one institution are not usually strong unless you can give a compelling argument, and you can do that in your paper, in your proposal, a compelling argument as to why doing the research on this one institution, that the findings could be useful to developing research theory better, or to other understandings of the broader community. But if it's just limited to one institution, sometimes what comes across is you're trying to evaluate your situation. You're not really trying to do research on STEM teacher retention and effectiveness in high-need school districts. And by the way, the definition of high-need school districts is in the solicitation. It is a federal definition. We didn't make it up. And so I'm not going to go into any more than saying that. Okay, next slide. We do capacity building. And again, it's now up to $100,000. And this is if you need, your colleagues, your institution or institutions, you need some support for a year in order to figure out what you're going to really do. And what data is going to be available or not available. Meaning the data's there, but nobody's going to let you have it. So you better not be depending on it. So you might need a year to really work out this. And so we can fund you for a year. Capacity building proposals, unlike the full research track 4 proposals, which are 15 pages, capacity building are only 10 pages. So they're 10 pages long, the project description. They're actually longer than 10 pages because there's a project summary and there's other stuff, but 10 pages to talk about what you want to do in your capacity building. And so you're going to talk about who you're going to bring together, what kinds of things you're looking for, but you don't really know what exactly you're doing yet. So you may say, well, we think we're going to be looking at research around blah, 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 but we're going to use this year to figure out the literature and other things. So just know that that is available to you. Next slide, please. So this is a true or false test. We're not doing this as a poll. So we're just asking you in your own little space, in your own little room, on your little yellow sticky pad or whatever, your iPad or your iPhone or your whatever, or your Android, to answer these questions for yourself. Track 4 proposals must involve Noyce scholars, fellows, or projects. So true or false? They have to have both qualitative and quantitative methods. True or false? They have to include letters of commitment detailing access to appropriate data. I actually didn't mention that. So probably to get that one right, one of two things are true. You read the solicitation and you know, or you're going to guess at it and get it right. And true or false, you need to identify the methods to be used to answer the research questions, as well as a description of the sample to be studied. Okay, so I'm going to admit, I don't remember. Do we have a slide where the answers are there, or do I just give the answers? I just give the answers. Okay. Number 1, they have to involve Noyce scholars, fellows, or projects. False. If you'll remember, I said you can get $1 million to study other teacher retention, effectiveness, programs, places, groups. It doesn't have to have Noyce. You get more money if Noyce projects are substantively engaged. So the first one was false merely because you don't have to involve Noyce. Number 2, you have to include both the qualitative and quantitative. False. Your brain might recall that I said you can use mixed method, you can use only qualitative, you can use only quantitative. We don't care, we care that it matches the research questions and the research design and the theory that's undergirding the research you're doing. Letters of commitment, detailing access to appropriate data. I did not mention that. That is true. And we're very serious about this because people tell us they're going to get data from school districts, and then the school districts aren't going to give them access to that data. And so it's over. So you need to know going in that you've got a commitment. Not, we're very supportive of the work that Dr. Fabulous is going to do, but you've got a commitment that you're going to have access to the data. And sometimes there's state databases. Well, what kind of access are you going to get there? And the last one, identify methods to answer the research questions, including the sample to be studied, is true. Okay, now, if there's not really a sample, who is it you're studying? What is that? But you have to tell us about those things. So the first 2 were false and the last 2 were true. Next slide, please. Oh, yay, we've hit Q&A time. All right, so if you have a question, you can unmute. We can't see you, so just unmute and you can tell us who you are and where you're from, and you can ask your question. And remember, any question you ask is helpful to everybody else that is in this webinar. So first question.
And Kathleen, I will say there's one question in the chat I could go ahead and ask while people sort of get themselves organized.
Great.
So our colleague Seema Rivera, welcome, says, do partner institutions need to have both an ed faculty and STEM faculty? And then parentheses, not collaborator, but partner / subaward partner. And I also invite Seema, if you want to unmute and clarify, you are most welcome to do that.
Sorry, my dogs are howling.
No worries, no worries.
I was just gonna, so not the collaborator that you're doing substantial work with, but I guess the other, if you're working with other institutions, to gather data, et cetera, so they're not really doing research with you. I guess that's my question.
Okay, So if the project is submitted by one institution, and then it has other institutions involved, but it's one proposal that is submitted and maybe has some subawards to some other institutions. It's the proposal will only need one STEM faculty member and one education researcher, and then whatever else you need to build out your team, because that's one project submitted as one proposal. If, however, it is a collaborative submission, so University A submits a proposal, University B submits a proposal, University C submits a proposal, and it's all the same proposal, they're working on it together. But it's one project, but those are 3 different proposals. They each need a researcher and a STEM faculty member. Does that get at what you wanted to know?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, I got the first one right.
All
What's
right.
the next
I don't see other questions in the chat. Other questions from folks, please.
I actually put a question in the chat, but I can ask it. This is Andrew Wynn from Virginia State University. And my question was, can a co-PI be faculty emeritus? So someone who's retired from the university, but is still interested in doing the research?
I don't see a problem with that if they are really engaged in the work. Let me say that on the other tracks, I would have a problem with that because we want to be changing. When people are engaged in work, they can help change what's going on in their own institution. But here we're talking about a research endeavor. So if the faculty had the right credentials and you thought that was important, you would want to explain it and why they're the right person, so that first the reviewers and then second NSF goes, yeah, this makes sense. I mean, we don't want to lose all that expertise. Some of us are going to retire someday.
And thank you, Andrew. You're right. I totally missed that question. There's another one in the chat. Michelle, do you want to unmute and ask? If not, I will read. It says, does an MS in ecology or physics count as an advanced STEM degree? Oops, it just scrolled on me. Does this hold even if the individual also has a PhD in, say, science education?
No. So the PhD in science education is the advanced degree. The reason we use the word advanced degree and don't just go ahead and say PhD is because we also want community colleges to play in this space. And in a lot of community colleges don't have PhD faculty. And so there we would allow for the advanced degree to be an MS. But in an institution where the faculty typically have PhDs, or in the case of an individual whose PhD is in education, it doesn't count as the STEM degree. But that person can be the PI and then have another person that is a STEM faculty member that is a co-PI, and then fill out the team.
And so Michelle comments, so it penalizes an individual who has multiple degrees. And I will just respond, I don't think it's intended to penalize anyone. I think the intent is to try and bring people together who have really divergent expertise beyond just education research or beyond just the STEM disciplines. Kathleen, do you want to comment on that?
No, I think that was a great comment. And again, we want that person to be able to be a PI. That's not a problem. They just have to have other people on the team that fill out the team and bring that the STEM perspective to it. And I understand that if your background, you know, I'm a biologist by training, but I'm a teacher educator. Everything after that is in education. So I only can bring that lens. But if I was still doing research in freshwater algae like I used to do, then I would bring that lens. And so it's really important. But thank you for that question, because it allows us to clarify it.
All right. So the next question from Elizabeth says, do you have to do a capacity building proposal with a track 4 or can you apply for just a capacity building proposal? And the second part of that question is, can capacity building include stipends to teachers for professional development?
You want to answer that one? You want me to take it?
You can go for it. That's good.
Okay. So first of all, at a certain point, I thought you were asking whether you had to have a capacity building to submit a track for it. You don't ever have to have a capacity building. Okay. And so then I think the question was, does the capacity building have to be capacity building for track 4? No, you can put in a capacity building proposal and say, we're going to explore what track we think is appropriate for the partners that we have involved in this work. And then, but you're going to have to come close and tell us, so what are you going to be looking for? Because if you're planning to explore doing a track 4, that's a very different exploration than if you're planning to do a track 2. So you may want to have to kind of narrow it down for that. And then there was the last part. Oh, stipends.
For teachers to do professional development.
Right. It's not immediately clear to me that that would be a part of a capacity building, but if you can explain how it is, it's not that we're going to preclude it, but the purpose of a capacity building proposal is not to provide dollars for professional development. It is to build capacity and look at things. So if you needed to do some professional development with a set of people in order to explore what you want to do, then we don't have a problem with that. It's definitely not a scholarship thing. So by stipend, I'm referring to just, you know, you're going to bring 7 teachers together for a week and you're going to pay them $100 a day to help you craft, you know, and give their voice to the proposal that you're considering submitting it, whether it's a track 4, track 2, or track 1 or 3. But yeah, you could do that to get the voice of the teachers in there and pay them just like they're professionals. We pay, you know, every budget has faculty on it and they pay the faculty what the faculty get. And we want to see teachers paid as professionals too. What else we got?
I will say the next question is, can the STEM discipline PhD be in developmental psychology or neuroscience if this is relevant to the research questions?
Sure.
Or does it have to be in a discipline that participating teachers are trying to teach?
No, if it's appropriate to the research, then you've taken care of it.
All right.
Thank you for asking that question.
All right. And Michelle, thanks. I appreciate there's sort of some ongoing commenting in the chat about those of us who kind of are, I would call hybrid professionals. So I'll say I have a PhD in neuroscience. I did a postdoc in STEM education. I worked in K-12 science education, and now I am an unintentional professor of biology, tenured and full. And so I appreciate that many of us have these hybrid identities. And many of us are probably in tune with both the cultures of education and STEM, but in the spirit of a federal solicitation, these are the guidelines that we really have to abide by. Okay, other questions from folks about Track 4, the Noyce Track 4 program? All right. I think, Kathleen, that if it sounds good to you, we'll go on to the second part.
Take it away, Kimberly.
All right, we'll go on to the second part, and then people can keep mulling and thinking of questions. The second part of this, or part of the webinar, is more generally about proposal preparation. And I want to appreciate that some of you may have submitted lots of NSF proposals, maybe even Noyce proposals. And so some of this might be reminders. Other folks might be doing this for the first time. And so I want to give you just a few guidelines. I think before I even go into kind of what we have to share here, I cannot emphasize enough how important it is to really deeply read reread, re-explore the solicitation. So I think the Noyce solicitation is more so than even other solicitations at the National Science Foundation, chock full of information and guidance that maybe the first read, you're not even quite sure that's what you should be paying attention to. So please, the solicitation is the most key resource. So the other things to really be thoughtful about in terms of preparing your proposals, we're just going to give you a bit of advice, are the project summary. So the project summary is the first no more than 1 page that summarizes your project for program directors and for reviewers. In the overview, the first sentence must include the specific Noyce track of the proposal. If you're going for a Noyce track 4, that would be track 4 Noyce research. And it must also name all the institutions and partners, including the high needs school districts, nonprofits, organizations as appropriate that are going to be involved in the project. And so that's really, really helpful to both program directors and to reviewers to lay that out very clearly in the first sentence. That project summary also needs to make the argument both for the 2 National Science Foundation merit review criteria, intellectual merit, broader impacts, and intellectual merit, I'll say a little bit more about in a minute, but how important is this work? How well designed is the project? How is this going to generate new knowledge and help us understand things that we didn't already know about STEM teacher effectiveness and retention? And then broader impacts. What is the benefit of this work to STEM education more broadly and to society? How is this going to help lots of folks beyond the place where the research is happening really improve STEM teacher education in our country? And I will just, as an aside, say, for those of you who have reviewed, thank you so much for your service. For those of you who haven't reviewed, oftentimes reviewers are looking at a lot of proposals, and they'll look at your project summary as the main thing that they look at before they dig into your proposal. And so you really want to make sure that all of the key parts of your project, I know it's hard, are represented in that 1 page. So spending a lot of effort on your project summary is going to really help the reviewers understand what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish. Then you have your project description, which is 15 pages, which sounds like a lot, and we all know that it is not a lot of space. And there are certain things that really have to be in that project description in no more than 15 pages. And you can put it in any order that you like. This is not a list of the order you have to do it in. But you absolutely have to address broader impacts. So NSF requires a labeled section of what the broader impacts are in your project description. As Kathleen said earlier, you really need to situate the work in the literature and identify the 1 or more theoretical frameworks that are going to guide the work. It's really helpful to reviewers, I've seen, if you can identify gaps in the literature, right? These are the things that we don't understand about STEM teacher education and teacher effectiveness and retention in high need schools. And this is how we're going to try and address that gap in the literature. You don't have to have one theoretical framework. Some people use multiple lenses, but articulating them, and then not only articulating them, but threading them through the whole proposal so that those theoretical frameworks inform not only your research questions, but your chosen methodologies and measurements and your analytical frames is really important. Methods. So I think Kathleen said a lot of things about methods. People tend to, attend a lot to who they're going to be recruiting to participate, something like a sample often. People attend somewhat to the measurement tools they're going to use. I think that I have seen in my own experience here that attending more to the validity of those measurement tools or how you're going to establish evidence that the measurement tools you're using are measuring what you think you're measuring is really important. And I think really important is how are you going to analyze the data that you collect? So oftentimes people are like, we're going to do these observations, we're going to get these surveys, and we're going to do these focus groups. And then what's unclear to reviewers is how are we going to generate knowledge out of all that data? What is the analysis strategy to make sense of all the evidence that's there to address the research questions? This all relates to knowledge generation. So what are the new things that we're going to learn? And then the last 2 on there, evaluation. Kathleen alluded to that even though these are research projects, there needs to be independent input from outside the project, which is the spirit of evaluation here, either through an advisory board or through external evaluator, and that evaluation plan needs to be described in the 15-page project description narrative. So there needs to be a section that says evaluation, guiding evaluation questions, really helpful. The timeline for those things, who's going to be doing what, all that sort of detail, really important. And then dissemination, if you learn things, when you learn things, how are you going to share them with the world? How are you going to share those in ways that get to stakeholders who could really benefit from the knowledge generated, so that the project could have the potential for broader impacts, is really, really important. Also, the note there says results from prior NSF support must be discussed within the 15 pages per the solicitation, and then the NSF PAPG, as it's called, Proposal and Awards Policies and Procedures Guide. If you're not familiar with that, that is easily found on the web. Make sure you see the new 2023 hot off the press version. But if you have had prior NSF support in the last 5 years, you have to highlight the results of that support, at least one project, and you really need to address both the intellectual merit results from that project and the broader impacts results from that project. And then at the bottom of this, it says NSF no longer requires a specific section entitled intellectual merit like it does for broader impacts. Just keep that in mind. That doesn't mean you can't have one. And I encourage you, there, both intellectual merit and broader impacts are the merit review criteria. So even though it's not required, that would certainly be a fine addition to the proposal. So those broader impact criteria, I'll just reiterate, because those are the criteria that reviewers are asked to evaluate all proposals at NSF. What is the potential for the proposed activity to advance knowledge and understanding within the field or across different fields? And what's the potential for the proposed activity to benefit society or advance specific desired societal outcomes? And in this case, we all want to do the best we can do to support having fabulous and effective STEM educators in our K through 12 schools who are retained, especially in high need schools. And so that's the focus, the sort of lens through which we look at those merit review criteria. So other specific ways to kind of think about that is, to what extent do the proposed activities suggest or explore creative, original or potentially transformative concepts? So I think Kathleen probably would agree with me. There is a lot of space, there is a lot of landscape in research in this area where we have unexplored questions, but making the argument for reviewers that what you're doing is creative, original, and potentially transformative is an important thing to do in your project description. Also, reviewers are going to be looking for whether and how the plan is laid out in terms of carrying out the proposed activities, whether it's well-reasoned, well-organized, based on a sound rationale, who's doing the work, what's the timeline for work, do you have access, like Kathleen was saying, to the kinds of data that you're asserting you have access to. Does the plan incorporate a mechanism to assess success? That's that evaluation plan, or that evaluation section that's detailed and really gives some guiding questions. How well qualified is the individual, team, or organization to conduct the proposed activities? So a lot of these projects are really complex. And so having a team that brings together a lot of divergent expertise is also often really important to be able to accomplish the work. And reviewers are going to be looking at the research questions you're asking, the theoretical frameworks you propose to use, the measurement tools that you're going to use, the analytical approaches you're going to use, and they're going to be asking, are the people on the team have experience in doing those things? So if you're proposing something that you haven't done before, then do you have expertise on the team outside of yourself as a PI that is going to bring that expertise to the team? And then is it clear who on the team is kind of do what? And then lastly, are there adequate resources available to the PI, either at their home institution or through collaborations to carry out the proposed activities? This often is where that talking about what you have access to already, what you will have access to in terms of collaborations, and then really providing evidence of that in your proposal with letters of commitment or letters of collaboration, right? So there's a template for that, and Kathleen, correct me if I'm wrong, I know there's some different requirements for different tracks, but those letters that provide evidence that the people you name in the proposal are aware that they're named in the proposal and that they plan on collaborating with you. Kathleen, you want to say anything else about that?
The letters have to be substantive and not just use the template language that is provided in the PAPG. So the template language just kind of says, we'll do whatever it says in the proposal. No, you have to, the letter should say, we commit to doing the following. There can be a little bit more wrapped around that, but the letters are actually making commitments, and this is where commitments to accessing the data becomes very important. So look, the solicitation can feel really long when you're not familiar with it. You can do the search on the word letters, that word, and then you can see what is required of track 4.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, because if you're submitting proposals to different parts of the NSF, that's one aspect of how the letters work with Noyce that is a little bit different than other programs. All right, so the last sort of piece is to do maybe a quick check for understanding, penultimate piece. So I'm just gonna be quiet for just maybe 15 or 20 seconds. You can read that list and think which of these must be included in the proposal, in a Noyce Track 4 proposal. Just quiet and just read through those and think to yourself yes or no as you read each one of them. All right, so it's just a minute to look at them. So so the project summary with intellectual merit and broader impacts labeled must be included in the proposal. So both of those merit criteria have to be in the 1-page overview project summary. The 15-page project description absolutely is a key part of your proposal. A dissemination plan, how you're going to share what you learned, what comes out of the project. Result of prior NSF support, if applicable, has to be in there. Research questions that communicate what it is you're trying to figure out to the reviewers need to be in there. Research design, data sources, methodology. I think that list really needs to include an analysis plan. I will add all of those things need to be included in the proposal. Relevant research literature. And then a plan for objective evaluation. I think we've tried to move away from that word. A plan for independent evaluation, right? Some sort of evaluation and feedback to the project that's independent of the core team that's doing the research needs to be involved. So really everything on this list needs to be involved in the proposal, and a lot more stuff. Yeah, everything there are things that you really need to be paying attention to when you're preparing your proposal. So the last slide for this section is just some tips that come from a lot of different program directors and leadership of Noyce about tips for success. And so I'll leave you in this section with those, and please be thinking. I see there's one question in the chat. We'll move to questions in the chat just momentarily. Just be aware of prior and ongoing projects and advances in the field, and really situate your research questions in terms of those results. There's nothing more painful than having a project that comes in that proposes to do something that just came out in the literature like in the previous year. So keeping up to date is hard, but you definitely want to do that. Cite the literature, use it, leverage it to really rationalize why your project is like key and necessary and timely and addressing a gap in what we don't understand about STEM teacher effectiveness and retention in high needs schools. Include timelines and benchmarks in your plan for everything, but for the independent feedback that you're going to get. So getting that independent evaluative feedback early is really important. Like getting that feedback 4 years into the project's not going to help you iterate and not going to help you kind of course correct. So please attend to that and make sure that it's early. Really propose a cost-effective but high impact project. So be very thoughtful about budget and budget justification. I am always encouraging PIs to think of their budget justification as another tool to communicate to reviewers the key pieces of your project that it just can't happen without those pieces. And so if you need to spend money on things, that's great. That's what the budgets are for, but make sure they're cost effective and make sure they're very well justified in that budget justification. Make sure you just, attend to all the required details and sections. And I know there's a lot going on there. And so we're trying to give you some lists, and the solicitation is a great guide. If you're resubmitting a previously declined proposal, which you're in it with the best of us, I've done it many times, then really deeply consider reviewers' feedback. Also, your proposal may have should have come with program director comments. So if you're having trouble finding that, reach out and we'll help you find it. And don't submit a declined proposal without making substantive changes. So I think Kathleen and I share a really developmental perspective. She said earlier, you're not competing against anyone but yourself, that people are trying to give feedback, constructive feedback about how to bring the project in line with the solicitation and to try to give you advice about what to clarify. So please take that into account when you're revising. And related to that, put yourself in the reviewer's place. I know that can be hard, but think about who the constituency and audience of folks who are reading these proposals are. Have other folks read your proposal and give you feedback. I know that time is really hard. Writing proposals on top of everything else is challenging, but taking the time to do that can give you some really key insights that help you clarify things before it gets to reviewers who then don't understand it. Provide supporting details to substantiate the identified partnerships. I think this comes back to letters and making sure if somebody's named in your proposal, then there should be letters there. There should be evidence of how they might be compensated in the budget. So really make sure those things line up. Make sure that the requested budget sort of fits the scale and the scope of the work. Kathleen talked about how partnerships with noise projects can scale up these budgets to be up to $2.5 million, but you would want to be very thoughtful and really justify how that scale and scope of work is going to require that amount of investment. And then lastly, we have just a fabulous team of program officers. So Kathleen and I are here on behalf of several other people, and you're welcome to reach out to any and all of us. There are some of us that work more on the track 4 wing of things, but please don't hesitate to reach out and arrange a 30-minute call and ask more clarifying questions as your proposal preparation sort of matures and you find out new questions that you maybe didn't ask today. So I think that's the advice on proposal preparation. I know we have 7 minutes left, and I see 2 questions in the chat. Andrew, I promise I'm not going to miss this one this time. So a question from Andrew. If you have a project that works with multiple districts, do all the partner districts have to be designated as a high needs school district? Kathleen, I've talked a lot. Why don't you take that one?
So the districts, the research has to be done about STEM teachers in high need school districts. So by definition, the pool of individuals that you're looking at have got to be teaching in high need school districts. Now, that doesn't mean high need schools, but high need school districts. And by the way, if there's just one school in a district that meets the definition of high needs, then the district is considered high needs. And therefore, unfortunately, most of the districts in the United States are high needs. So, but the pool you need to be looking at are teachers teaching in high needs school districts.
Okay. Thank you so much, Kathleen. So Victor has a question. Victor, do you want to unmute and ask this question?
Yeah, sure. Hello there. Victor here from Puerto Rico, Inter-American University of Puerto Rico. Thank you very much for this webinar. Okay, specifically considering capacity building activities that we've been reading in the university, since we don't have experience with Robert Noyce, right? So we need to build something. We noticed that we're interested in this area that says that some activities that can be approved are related to course development, but it also says or existing courses, development of existing courses. That is an issue that we have because we've been noticing lots of students that are studying STEM disciplines, and now they want to get into education and they want to improve their teaching and learning practices. And we have identified a great number of courses that we need to improve the contents, considering STEM education fields, STEM education practices, so that they can be assured and they can develop those practices to incorporate that knowledge in biology and physics and chemistry in the classroom. So existing courses, is that something that we can do? Because we're intended to create some courses, very important courses, but can we go over those that we have and incorporate best practices of teaching STEM education?
Kathleen?
So, Victor, I'm a little confused. I'm wondering, what solicitation are you looking at?
Capacity building.
In what NSF, what's the number on it?
Oh, well, let's see. It's the
No worries.
Robert Noyce.
Okay, I just want to make sure you're in the right.
That is, I don't have it right in front of me right
Okay,
now.
no,
It's the one that it's in August 29th or something
Okay,
like
you're fine. I just want to make sure you're in the right one, because a lot of what you were saying sounded like a different program that you could also consider to develop courses. And that's the Improving Undergraduate STEM Education Program. We call it IUs because we live in acronyms. And that number solicitation is 23-510. But you're looking at Noyce, and that's solicitation 23-586. And if you wanted to develop courses, you typically would not be looking at a capacity building for track 4, but you might be looking at a capacity building around some of the other tracks, right? And so that's why we have these words in here about the coursework. But typically in track 4, unless in track 4, you're not going to be developing courses, but you could put in a capacity building related to tracks 1, 2, and 3. But those have all got to be about recruiting individuals that are going to become teachers or are teachers. So if you have some other notions, what you might want to do, Victor, is put together a one-pager for us and send it to one of us and let us react to it and make some suggestions and maybe even have a Zoom meeting.
Yeah, and I might add that I think capacity building and the listing of courses is there maybe in part because some of the other tracks for the Noyce program are programs that might engage teachers in courses, like teacher leaders in courses. And so then in order to build that towards that program, they need a year to figure out how to kind of reconfigure the curriculum so that they could launch a teacher leadership program for track 3. And so it's not meant to be generally for courses. All of those capacity buildings, it's helpful to think this is a capacity building towards a Noyce track 3, or this is a capacity building towards a Noyce track 2, or a capacity building towards a Noyce track 1 or track 4. And so that might be where the confusion is. But I agree with Kathleen entirely, Victor. And I'm not going to try and dig up the solicitations, but we put the numbers there so you can Google them. That looking at an IUs, the Improving Undergraduate STEM Education Program might be a great place to look as well. And the other thing is, just because Victor put in the chat NSF 21578, I just want to reiterate to everyone, and it's in the slides here, that the current Noyce solicitation is NSF 23586. There is a new solicitation, and you want to make sure you're looking at that new solicitation.
And I do want to say to Victor, he's absolutely right that in solicitation 23-586, it does say that capacity building, developing new courses. But as Kimberly said, you would be developing those new courses in your capacity building because they would be necessary courses for either your track 1, track 2, or track 3 proposal that you're going to put in the future. So they wouldn't be related to track 4. But so, for example, you want to do a track 2 and you need a master's program and you want to redo or get approved some new courses, and you could do that during your capacity building. So thank you, and I apologize for my confusion about what you were hoping to do.
No worries. And we are at the top of the hour. We have one more question and 3 more brief informational slides. Kathleen, should we do the one question and then 3 slides?
Let's do the question.
All right, and then we'll go a few minutes over. If you have to depart, no worries. This will be posted online afterwards, and we thank you for all the wonderful questions. I think our colleague at AAAS is giving some instructions. So the question from Karen, we're preparing a Noyce Track 4 proposal that will involve multiple sites, universities, and each site is committed to collecting data from their respective programs regarding teacher effectiveness and persistence. Do we need to collect letters of commitment from each of the sites to submit with our proposal?
What do you think, Kimberly?
I think this depends on the structure. So I think that if you have a single proposal and there is one institution that is a lead institution on the proposal, you would absolutely need letters of commitment from the other institutions that are involved. If, however, this is submitted as a collaborative proposal, and if you're like, I don't know much about that, then we can talk about some other time, but where it's one project, but each institution submits their own proposal, well, then you don't necessarily need letters of commitment because they're each putting in a proposal. And so it has to do with this structure of, is it a single proposal with like subawards, or is it a collaborative proposal? And I think collaborative proposals have been generally encouraged because it reduces the sort of double indirect costs. It's sort of it's a bit more efficient in terms of budgets. And so I think this is one where I would encourage Karen, reach out to one of us and we're happy to talk about your specific situation in a quick meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, and there are advantages and disadvantages to collaborative proposals. So they're in a collaborative, if one of those, let's say 3 partners doesn't do their work, nobody has access to the funds that were provided there because that was a separate award. But if it's one project with one proposal and subawards, and one of those subawardee institutions doesn't do their work, the whole project has access to those funds. So there are positives and negatives, and we'd be glad to talk to you about this. Okay, we're going to go through the last few slides. We can stay on for a few minutes if there are more questions. These are some other programs. Here's that program that Kimberly and I both referenced when we were talking with Victor about developing courses. You can do a capacity building developing courses in the Noyce solicitation, but in the IU's program, that's certainly an area that you can do. And there's more. If you are interested in doing fundamental research, not constrained by the STEM teacher retention and effectiveness in high need schools, but you want to do really fundamental research, you want to look at the EDU core research. And you may also be interested in one of our newer programs, the Racial Equity in STEM Education program, that is looking to make transformative contributions in that space. Next slide, please. Reiterating, this is the current solicitation, so make sure you're not using anything that has a 21 in the front of it. This is the right solicitation. And the PAPG applies. You have to know both the PAPG and the solicitation, but the solicitation says something that is inconsistent with the PAPG, you go with the solicitation. So this is the area, like I mentioned before, about the letters have to have more in them than the PAPG says, or that the capacity building proposal only has to be 10 pages. Because the PAPG is going to tell you things are 15 pages. So just know that the solicitation, what it says, if it's different, it's the truth, what you want to follow. You don't have to use, but you're welcome to use the common guidelines for education and research and development. You're also do not have to use, but you're welcome to use deeper approaches. And if you want to have a sense of the Noyce portfolio and where we are in the nation, because you want to build a proposal that's going to involve several Noyce projects, the nsfnoyce.org website is where our all of our projects have a presence, and you can locate them on the national map. Next slide, please.
And when the slides go up, these are all live links, and so you can actually click and get to those resources.
And this is again who we all are. This is the emails for all those faces you saw earlier. As Kimberly said, you're welcome to email us. You're welcome to email someone else. Kimberly and I work primarily in the track 4 space, but you're welcome to email anyone. What I'm about to say is not for Kimberly, it's for Kathleen. If you email me and I don't answer you within 2 business days, unless you get an out of office message, then please send your email again. And if I don't answer it again, send it again and again until I answer it. Emails get buried. I'm embarrassed when I find them 3 weeks later, and I would want to respond to you. So if you'll send it again and again. I promise you that you will be helping me and help you, and we are all in this together.
And you're always welcome to email me and I will arrange a meeting with you and Kathleen. I'm happy to be the go-between.
Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
I think we want to say thank you so much for your interest in the NSF Noyce program, in particular, the Track 4 research part of the program. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat, but we are, I think, as Kathleen said, happy to take them. All right. I will say apologies. I know everybody has lots of other places to be at top of the hour, and so many people are still here. So thank you so much. Once again, don't hesitate to reach out. The NSF is meant to serve and helping you and help you clarify things as you prepare your proposals. Want your time to be well used. Kathleen, you get last word.
thank you.
Oh. All right. Make it a great day. Thanks for all the work you do. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. And just from AAASI, thank you so much for joining us today. As we all said, the recording will be posted in the coming days, and this is the last one in this proposal series for the solicitation. So we'll have all those recordings up on the website. And as you saw, there's a survey link. If you have any final feedback, that would be very much appreciated. And just to echo Kimberly and Kathleen, thank you so much for joining. Have a beautiful day. Thanks all.